Hello, and welcome to the Let's Talk Transformation podcasts. Today's guest brings a rare blend of tech expertise and human insights to this table. So I'm thrilled to welcome Michel Langlois, seasoned technology executive and author of the compelling new book, Beyond the Code, that you can see behind Michel, for those of you that are watching, for those of you that are listening. Beyond the Code, Unveiling the Human Factor in Technology Leadership Innovations. Michel, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. Michel, your journey from a chicken farm in Quebec to the heart of Silicon Valley, God, that's a tagline in itself, isn't it? Um, has allowed you to gather insights, experience, stories from this tech world obsessed with speed, scale, software. And you've
And
seen for
revenue.
and
And revenue.
revenue, yeah, and
Yeah.
profitability completely. Which means that you've seen firsthand through that and through various large scale transformation programs and from the Silicon Valley boardrooms, if you like, that code alone doesn't transform organizations. People do.
Oh no, absolutely. Especially now when we have all those discussion about AI
Yeah.
and will it replace the human factor, etc. My experience has been unless you can motivate your team, give them
Mm.
context on decision of today and what we try to do.
Mm.
It's like climbing a mountain. You can try to do it by yourself. It's much more efficient if you have a team that you can trust and commonly you achieve your goal. That's what I found.
Mm. And it's so easy to say, isn't it? But so difficult to do. And I would like to dig into some of the learnings that
Perfect.
that your book documents. You know, your learnings as a leader, your learnings as a tech leader, but also your learnings for the future, which you generously share with us at the end of your book. But can we start with, and I want to come back to AI, but I do have one question around human behavior and what is one counterintuitive aspect of human behavior that you've observed in Silicon Valley that has significantly impacted tech innovation, either positively or negatively. But, you know, if one major learning stood out, Michelle, what would it be?
So I might surprise you with one, but I was dealing with engineering community. So you
Mm,
can imagine engineer are introvert, are really smart.
mm,
And what I find out is if I don't feed them with context of information, where we heading, why we're making those choices, here's what were the options we have to choose from.
hmm.
Engineers have an uncanny ability to extract data from their home and
Mm.
conclude something. And
Tell themselves their stories. Yeah.
so I find out I was better off to engage earlier than let them go too far away in the weeds and me having to kind of reconstruct their decision to align it with me.
Mm.
I find out it's much better off to engage early and face the elephant in the room if you have one.
Yeah. But we're back to the mountain discussion, aren't we? So good. So
Exactly.
and so what does that mean, Michelle, for the way you lead? Because clearly you already have technical expertise, and they are there with, like you say, they're very smart, a whole range of understanding of technical expertise. So how do you bring them context and clarity and also the leadership vision? Because they're two very different things, aren't they? You talk about them quite distinctly in your book.
Yeah, and look, context for me has been, especially if you're a public company,
Mm,
there is tons of information you can grab about the company,
yeah.
about your competitive land, about what analysts think is your future or not.
Mm,
And for me, it was like, they're going to read that. So I'm better off with the team to give them our version or interpretation of all this data,
mm,
do an all hands, answer the question. And if you do it the right way, all ends for me were fascinating because I was never getting the obvious question about leadership, like what's your favorite book that you're reading, what keeps you, awake at night. It
mm.
was literally people saying, I don't understand why we did that and why we're not doing this.
Wow.
And or are
Mm,
you afraid about a market change, a technology transition that we missed and why we're not going first? Are we a lagger? All of those questions are really good one, but you
mm,
can only get there if there's a little bit of a safe place for people to ask
Mm.
these type of exec
Mm.
to exec. So
Mm.
for me, it was like either it's a town hall or an all hands or walking the floor. I needed to have to say, okay, tell me what's on your mind now. I mean,
Mm.
I'm spending the time with you. You know,
Yeah.
let's be honest to each other. And what you're hearing that you think we can do better. And typically, when you can get to this level of engagement, you will see the people really speak out their mind.
Mm.
Now, like anything else, you have to filter the noise, you have to
Of
filter
course.
this and that.
Mm.
But ultimately, what's interesting, if you start to find a trend of commonality about the
Mm.
feedback, it gives you the beginning to think about how do I address that or not.
Mm.
And then put it in a roadmap, or put it in an investment to say, okay, the collective seems to think that we missed the boat on this. Well, let's address
Mm.
that.
Mm. And do you think creating that environment is your biggest learning? Because you evolved, didn't you, from a purely technical role at Cisco into one where you had to add this part of cultural ambassador, leading people, inspiring them with a vision. So
Yeah.
tech, but not only. Would you say that that's your biggest learning?
Well, the biggest learning, I think, for me was the moment that I couldn't just rely on the fact that we're in a common physical place. Because, I
Mm.
mean, at the beginning, when I was at Cisco, we have those massive campus of 40 building.
Mm.
Literally, it was a town within a town.
Yeah.
And it was still the culture at the time too. Everybody has to go now
Yeah.
5 days a week. And you have always a ways to meet people if you need to.
Mm-hmm.
When we started to expand globally, especially through partnership, for example, partner
Mm.
organization in India and other places of the world, then suddenly you don't have this tool anymore. Then what you have to do is you have to rely on people that are locally placed to kind of be your voice, your
Mm.
microphone, your
Mm.
megaphone if you want. and basically they have to take the message from corporate and
Mm.
bringing home and deal with the fact that the culture can be different
Mm.
across countries. So I find out that the globalization of my labs forced me to change the way I interact. And then you can imagine that was way before we hit COVID,
Yeah.
which completely transformed everything after that.
Yeah. Completely.
So
Mm.
the lesson I had in the past, walk the alley, go to the coffee, I ask the people what you're doing. I had to modify those things. I couldn't rely just on that. And
Mm.
ultimately, what you have to rely, it's a little bit like the farm. You have to trust your people
Yeah.
to carry the mission.
Yeah.
And if there's issues after that, to reach out. I mean,
Mm.
at the end, it's as simple as that.
Mm. And what about when they don't share the same view on strategy? So I'm thinking about, Cisco's no technology, religion, but strong beliefs principle, which I found fascinating. But how do you then personally navigate, Michelle, situations where your team's strong technical beliefs are clashing with a strategic imperative to adopt a competitor's or a different technology?
Um, that's always going to be challenging. I give
Mm.
you an example of this. Part of the work we were doing was to kind of try to build standard for the industry.
Mm.
So that's a good example
Yeah.
because as part of those standards at the time, one was about the definition of the IP protocol. What can
Mm.
it do? Can it carry data, voice, and video? But at the same time, I have another group which was proposing not to use IP,
Yeah.
but use more like ATM-like technology called
Mm.
MPLS. So you can imagine is they both report to me. They both paint a world where one is going to win over the other. And I realized it's like my children. As much
Yeah.
I would like all of them to be programmed by me and basically do the thing the way I want, they're going to have a different persona.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end, what I was trying to do with them is to say, as long that you basically explain why your technical belief or conviction is about X, Y, and Z versus the other camp, you don't have to basically trash it. Respect the other camp, respect diversity,
Mm.
and basically let the customer decide what naturally they're inclined. And that's where the no religion came from,
Mm.
which is also funny because, man, engineers, they do have belief. They
Yes,
do have
yes, yes. I
they
trust
do
you.
have, they do have religion. So if you go and you say there might be more than one way to solve the problem,
Mm.
then people start to like, I think you're right.
Mm.
As opposed to say within the company, I used to say to them, look, we compete with the external world. Could
Mm.
you stop competing inside?
Yeah.
And if we can be one team and realize there's difference, then I think we're going to do better in the industry.
Mm.
And I think it took the ability to show that customer, a widespread of customer, were not polarized like we think we were. So they
Mm.
were, when you start to show that the customer has adopted different flavor of your
Mm.
product, it does help people to say, well, it's kind of the real life. And I was like, yeah, it's like home.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You cannot just tailor everything in one way. You have to acknowledge those difference and do the best
Mm.
with it.
It's hard though, isn't it? Because often we are formatted, particularly in engineering and code and things like that, to be quite binary in the way we think and to be quite deterministic. Not that it's simple, that's not my point at all, but it's quite set out, isn't it? And logical. Whereas the human discussion we're having is complex, messy, and very far from binary. But this multifactorial skill set is something you talk about quite a lot when you talk about the new playbook for leadership. Um, and could you tell us a little bit more about this new playbook for tech leadership? What's in it and what is shifting, Michelle, and why is that necessary?
Well, and I think I'm back into, you're going to have to draw into your own experience at home
Mm,
because I have kids. They live in different city. I have the problem to say, how do I maintain a contact?
hmm
I can obviously call them individually and reach out, which I expect manager to do. I
hmm
mean, keep having your weekly meeting where you talk about the alignment, the strategy, this and that. I never understood manager that say, "Oh, I can have 50 direct report, and they're all good with me." And I'm like, I don't know how you do that because if you try to have a one-on-one after that to say, "Hey, Susie, how are you doing this week?"
mm,
I mean, you look a little bit like distracted. I mean, talk to me. I mean, is it something I can address? Is it worry about something? Is it happening?
mm,
Something happening in your life? I mean, you have to be able to divide your time in a way to reach out. So
yeah,
that's the first thing I learned. And after that, look, if you're now completely distributed like my kid, I have to have a force function where they can gather together, either to celebrate or to talk about, oh my God, we're launching a new big thing. This is exciting. We want to give you, why we're going there, why we think it's going to be beneficial for our customer and the industry. You're going to have to redesign ways to
mm,
reconnect, but in the different ways than you exist in the campus.
mm,
And that's what I'm learning is the art of the leader of tomorrow are going to be reach out, empower, delegate, but also bring back everybody on regular occasion, if you want, to
mm.
get alignment and consensus. And consensus, look, I'm not a big fan to say everybody has a vote and we're going to say you have to run a business also to the
Yeah, of
point to
course.
say we have priority, we have needs, we have opportunity,
Mm,
and the consensus among the leadership and all of you is we're going to go that way.
mm,
Um, and then we're on the boat,
mm.
but on the same boat, ideally.
Yeah. I mean, it brings me back to the idea of multifactorial. So everyone has a voice, but it doesn't mean that everybody's voice will be chosen. And I think it brings me to the idea of leading through crises like the dot-com bubble bursting or massive downsizings that you've done. And looking back, what was the sort of most surprising positive outcome that emerged from one of those deeply challenging periods? Because I'm hearing from you, it's quite easy, isn't it? Hindsight is a wonderful thing. Talking about, we need context, we need clarity, we need delegation, we need empowerment, which is true. But we don't necessarily have that understanding when it happens. So
Oh
in
yeah,
terms
and
of decision making and people wanting to be consensual, that's not what happens in a crisis, is it? You can't afford, because you're running a business, to be consensual all the time.
oh yeah. You have to be surgical. But I give you an example. I had kind of several times there was crisis of a market disruption or global economic
Mm,
shift, if you want, like the .com. And I
mm,
remember that first, I was as surprised as everybody how fast the bubble exploded.
mm.
I mean, here we are in the big business of 50 billion, and suddenly the dashboard or the revenues look like we're going to be down at 20 billion. Like two-thirds of the business is gone in 6 months.
Wow.
And I remember at the time I say, what the heck? I mean, what kind of tools do we have that missed that we're dropping like a bucket? And I realized that we have never designed for things like that. In fact, I think we're in denial of the data. So if I go back to the employee that suddenly open the paper and see the same thing and see the market crashing, the first thing I did is say, look, we were as surprised as you folks. Nobody can anticipate that. Now, our work is to work with our customer to rebuild that business, because the fundamental is still that it might not be called the .com moving forward, but the internet and distribution of services over the network will continue to rise. It's human consumption of data, voice and video. So we had to be at that point to say, look, there was things that we control. And if it was our mistake, well, admit it. That would be probably the first step you do. For things you cannot control or that are global scale, we're all going to have to work together, including also with the customer, with the industry, with the venture capitalists, to say what's happening and as anybody has an idea. And I realized that part of our work was to reach out to our customer to see what they see and what's their fear, but as well as our employee. And when you say, okay, look, this is the way now we see the business setting. This is the constraint that we have. This is the decision why we hate. At least you've done the hardest part, which is to say, acknowledge that, be honest with the employee, and look, your goal at that time is to, I wouldn't say rebuild the trust. For me, it was more about convince them that this industry nation called the networking business industry, I still have a bright future, and we will be the company that carry through, if you want. That's what I find out. If you can live that moment, etc. And sure, after that, look, there was hard decision about the workforce. I mean, we had to cut people, and in one point of time, you can try to say, I'm going to make it a personal choice of X, but if you have 1,000 to deal with, how do you identify that? And there was different ways to look at this. We realized that we had made tons of investment in non-profitable business. Unfortunately, it was probably better to cut your loss. Unfortunately, impacting the people there than try to stack rank every performer in the company. It's impossible. You don't have the time. It's not going to be a good outcome. So, and once you're done after that, what's important is to rebuild the trust that is not going to happen every month.
Yes, which brings me back to the question of AI. We touched on it briefly at the beginning, Michel. Do you think that the onset of AI and the availability of data and what AI now knows how to do, do you think that would prevent the type of crises like the dot-com bubble bursting, or would it allow us to anticipate it? Or what do you think the effect of generative AI is on strategic planning and, let's say, anticipation of business strategy? Because you talk a lot about, when you talk about partnership and the fact that, it should be a natural strategic extension of the business and not a last minute add-on where, oh my goodness, this is going on, we need to partner with them or him. Do you think AI can leverage that for us?
Not sure. I mean, the way I look at AI is he has an uncanny ability to take data set at the level of the planet, if you want, aggregate them, correlate them, and derive essentially an outcome. Sure, you could say generative AI is going to go one step. The agent are going to be self-learning and adapting. But my feeling is, I don't think right now the technology, that's a point, look, it could change in 10 years from now, where I wouldn't necessarily believe they can anticipate the unknown. Because I think to some extent, they would be like human at that point. When an event happened that you never seen, what's your first thing? You're a little bit in denial.
Lost.
I close your eye, it's going to disappear. I'll see if tomorrow it's still there, and you like that. But I think it will be the same thing, because those agent or this agentic world I don't think they will be able to correlate what's the new need to be. And this is where I hope that the human realize that you have to basically guide those agents the same way you're going to have to guide your staff. And ultimately, you will end up with few doors to choose from. And if you just rely on machine to make those decisions, I don't think you're going to be in the business forever.
Yeah. So you've got to keep pragmatism as well as sort of efficiency and curiosity, haven't you?
But and that's why. But I do believe in the potential is uncanny. I think the ability to augment tasks and automate and give back the freedom of thinking to developer, product manager, etc., is going to be fantastic. I really have a hope that these technology, and that I have a bunch of kids and I talk about the Legos. I'm so excited about what we're going to be able to combine. And hopefully we will use that technology for goods and not essentially, create a worse world than it is right now. So
it reminds me of, so it's all about balances. It reminds me of your kitchen of product development. Let's put it that way. I really like that. And I would like you to walk us through it a little bit around, this need for balance between chaos and stability, if I can put it like that, and why it's important for large established tech companies to either recreate or maintain this startup kitchen dynamic as they try to scale. And I think it's quite relevant to the AI question.
Yeah, look, and by the way, the kitchen came because my daughter is a chef, so I had firsthand. I had firsthand.
Now I understand what I read.
Okay. Oh, you run it, and look, I like ratatouille and all those things. But the funny thing in the kitchen for me was like a customer come in your restaurant, open the menu. That's the outcome that they build the trust of spending that dollar for an experience that they feel will be unique in the industry.
Yeah.
So to some extent for engineering, whatever you publish become a commitment for you to deliver. The way you organize the work internally is first, what did we learn intuitively is not everybody can be a chef.
Yeah.
And if you have too many cooks in the kitchen,
spoil the broth.
You know what's going to happen. And ultimately, you have to basically scale your kitchen in a way there's different station, specialization of work, give them an independence, because if you subdivide the work between X, Y, and Z, you don't have the time to run into, are you doing the right thing? Show me how you're doing. I mean, you can do it with training if you want outside, but when you're in the kitchen, you rely on the concept of distribution, delegation, commitment, and even more important is in any kitchen, there will be time where you drop things. It bursts into flame. You have to react, and you have to collectively stop looking at blame, but to see how we're going to recover from it. Because if you don't, you're going to end up with the kitchen with a backlog that start to make the customer uneasy about what's happening. I'm being here for another 30 minutes and nothing gets served. So I think what I learned of the kitchen analogy is you have to be able to pivot if something happens. And what I learned also is the last thing you want is everybody start yelling at each other. You have to keep your conversion a little bit behind. You have to be, okay, keep your head straight up. We're going to recover. We're going to do this and that. The time to learn why we got there. And it could be also that you have people that are not up to the task. But all of these things have to happen when you deliver the value to the customer, and behind the scene, you prevent another crisis. But for me, it was like this kind of word where there's no passion, there's no energy, there's no the fatigue that you make mistake, or you in one point of time you say, this is not to my standard. I think that's if you're able to create this kind of synergy, you're gonna be probably a Michelin star moving forward.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because you're back into balancing, aren't you? Like the structured environment and the framework to allow more fluidity and agility and flexibility in what you're doing. And it brings me to the discussion around legacy and the future, Michelle, and the fact that, part of this book, in fact, there's the whole last part is dedicated to those topics. And I wondered if you could walk us through the anecdote of RTFC, which I really, really liked, because that for me, and I will let you tell the story, was sound advice from someone who was in the know in that situation. And
So the story is the following. When I joined Cisco, I relocate, with my degree in engineering, and I came from a telecom formal ways to build things, specification, design, review committee, blah, blah, blah. Structure, extremely structure, to the point that it will take 3 years to do anything in one way. And I came with my big idea to say, all those books, they were kind of written in Silicon Valley, and I can't wait to show them that I can speak that language and everything. And I remember when I came and I met those core engineers that will become my group, I say, where's the doc? Where's the training, by the way? I'd like to know what is this code base about? What does it do? And the engineer looked at me like, well, do you have a login? Yeah. Well, go in the repository of the code and read it. And I said,
okay.
What do you mean? We told you it's RTFC. Read the F code. And I was like, this is your onboarding? And I said, they say yes. And I say, how many line of code I have to read? Well, we're probably around 10 to 12 millions. And I said, do you have a ways to start? No, figure out. And if you don't, start loading the code and see what it does and go in the lab and learn by yourself, I was horrified. I was saying, like, I spent all my time in a structured discipline to find out that the people that building this internet are literally like artists a little bit.
Yeah.
They built it, they adapt, they talk to their friend. I mean, the concept of a meeting to discuss an interface, they were like, let's go lunch and we'll figure out how we split the work at the API level. But one thing that was interesting I learned from them was I'm committing my work to the company. And that was a big act, if you want. If you commit publicly to your peers, it has implication. And I remember to say, whoa, you committing code. Yeah, because I'm proud of what I'm doing. I'm going to be an owner. I'm going to follow my code. If it doesn't perform well, I'll fix it. And if I really screw up, I deserve to be fired. And I was like, wow. I was self-policing, if you want. But there was a good concept there, if you want, which is honor your commitment and ultimately reach out. You get stuck. And they were doing this naturally. But after that, I realized there was some value of doing this thing. But don't take me wrong. And eventually got even with those engineers. And I say, the next big project, you cannot do it until you document what you do because you're a bottleneck.
Brilliant. But I mean, I love the fact that there's so much accountability, which is really important, isn't it, in a more fluid environment. But I love the fact in that anecdote that you actually found a bug in the code. So from all that unstructured exploration, you came up with something that actually helped the collective understand and fix the code.
And I think maybe I was a good guinea pig because I didn't have the context of everything they built, but I was able to say, I don't get that part. And then I realized that it was a part that nobody ever used or tested. And then at that moment, it was funny. I kind of established a human connection. And then from there, I knew who was a connector to reach out many. So when I say, you connect with people and you reach out, I'm not saying it's all about a big email or a big, PowerPoint presentation. It's about if you know who inspire, connect, guide, mentor, and do this and that, and you can reach out that first layer of connection, then you can scale to many. Because it's not about you, it's about them taking the risk to relay the information or provide their own context to what they see. So I find out this is much more efficient than from the mountain going to the human and the Mount Olympus syndrome, if you want.
So not only did you look out the other side of the mountain and think, oh, that mountain looks a bit weird, But also this connection thing, Michelle, brings me to the idea of and the topic of mentoring, which, mentoring the next generation is a key part of your legacy. And the idea of mentor in a box, I really liked the idea of mentor in a box. Could you walk our listeners through what a mentor in a box is, and and then I'll come back to my question that I have.
Yeah, so think about it. You join a company at different stage of maturity. When it's small, I think it's much easier to get fast to learn what you're going to do and what's your scope of work and this and that. When you join mature organization that have a lot of product, a lot of customer, a lot of technology and this and that, what's your ability to be efficient and productive? I was born at a time where you will be assigned a mentor. And the mentor was interesting. They were telling me our role is to make sure that you write code and you don't break everything around it. Otherwise, we all suffer from your execution if you want. So it was a natural way to say, when we think you're going to be ready to not only see the code, maintain the code, but add capabilities to it, then it's going to be your time where you graduate from our mentorship and you can go. And there was nothing like online training to allow you to do this. It didn't exist at the time. So you had to be back into, if I don't want to be wasted, I need to connect with people. And in my case, because I was coming from Canada, I didn't have a lot of friends from the Valley. I never been a company of that size. I had to talk to different group and I say, oh, you're in manufacturing, you're in the supply chain, you're in sales, you're in finance. And I was back into, what do you do?
Exactly, do you do?
But eventually, as I climbed the ladder, I realized that all those function because I have a basic knowledge of what they do and what they need. And I had an affinity to deal with dependency. And I know dependency means like, oh, if everybody report to me, that's much easier. Well, it doesn't exist in the real world. So if you have dependency on sales or customer services, or customer success, or this and that, you'll be able to live in a matrix world, which I believe is going to be critical moving forward.
Yeah. And just on that point of being critical moving forward, what's been one piece of advice that you find yourself often giving to like aspiring or upcoming tech leaders that you wish, Michel, that someone had told you? Maybe it's RTFC, maybe it's not. I don't know.
Well, I think the first one was I had to do a change in terms of my own skill. At one point of time, I thought that to get to a CTO level, for example, it was just an exercise to be smart, learn more, be broader, and do this. The reality is the super specialization, if you want, is not what's going to be the leader that can operate at the level of a company. So I have to start to understand that technology is one, product, competitive land, acquisition, partnership, finance, how to do a budget that cover the needs of today and the one in 18 months or 2 years. These were skills that nobody taught me. So I had to basically learn working with other group to say, how can I speak your language? How we can get to a common ground? But my advice would be, you have to be a specialist to establish trust. For example, in my kitchen, if you've been in a station of cakes, etc., it gives you a brand, a specialization if you want. If you want to go from I can cook cake to I can cook everything and guide everybody in the full menu, you're going to have to be broader. You're going to have also to learn to bring people with different skill than you. And I think it's the dilemma is to go from specialization to generalization. But if you want to go to that path, I will advise people to be curious about other function in the company and how you make decision around it. How do you get essentially an alignment between sales, customer success, and engineering about what direction we need to go? And sure, look, you can hope that every CEO is a Steve Jobs, and every day they invent the new world and they see it. But my experience is it might not be your environment moving forward. The days of those bigger than life CEO in Silicon Valley is probably going to be more and more challenged moving forward.
And if you were starting a new tech company today, Michelle, what would you prioritize in your blueprint? Because you walked out of Cisco with a blueprint, then you did the Juniper bit, you walked out of Juniper with a blueprint, then you went to Calix, you walked out of Calix. So what would you be prioritizing in a blueprint today?
So in the blueprint, I'm working with few startups these days. What I'm looking is disruption.
Hmm.
I mean, not a me too, not a a bigger mousetrap. I'm looking into disruption that take an environment to a next state, if you want.
Hmm.
And what I'm looking is, look, we're still in a world where there is COBOL, there is ancient code, there is silo technology. And I think what I'm looking is back to my root of networking. Look, what made Cisco what was a juggernaut in the industry was simply that we look into those silos are specialized, but they cannot talk to each other. So we realize that if we break the wall of communication and data exchange, everybody will be able to participate. And I guarantee you there are so many silo industry that could do better if you could basically, not collide them, but cohesion them together through, workflow automation, decision making, and optimization that I think they will perform much better. So I'm really looking into, I like the idea of fixing the old barn, if you want.
Yeah, yeah,
They had a value proposition. Okay, they got to a stage where it's hard now to get to the next level. Instead of tearing it down and say you're done, why don't we recycle a little bit more? I'm about sustainability of company, if you want.
yeah.
And I think if you do and you inject a mix of old guard and new talent and new idea and new technology, like I said, they're going to build different Lego, completely different Lego, which hopefully will create benefits for people.
And they're going to build it differently, aren't they? So I'm coming to a bit in the book where you talk a lot about the different leadership you need to go through the different stages from startup to scaled organization. And given your experience, what for you is one emerging unwritten, in inverted commas, rule or trend in leadership that is now going to be needed in the next 5 to 10 years? So as technology becomes more and more present, today it's quite clear the different stages from startup to scale up. But as we put more technology in there and there's more automation, what's the one sort of tech leadership rule that for you is going to be massive in the next 5 or 10 years?
Well, it's interesting. I've done two large transformations. You mentioned Juniper and Calix. What was interesting is I joined these companies at different point of time. Juniper was a 10 years old company. They already had passed the challenge of technology success. They had a brand, they had an install base. But what I realized is my goal to help them to innovate wasn't about a new product, was about like their infrastructure was kind of lagging behind now because they were so driven by revenue. And it's not a mistake of management. It was the pressure of the market, the investors. So when you reach a company in 10 years old, you'll be probably better off to look into your process, your infrastructure, your quality, and ultimately your customer satisfaction to say it's probably time to do an adjustment. Because if we don't do it now, these things are going to fall apart, like the roof, for example, on your house if you don't do it. So my point will be, if you hit a company 10 to 15 years old, you're going to find there's a lot of these things. And maybe the solution is to replace your technology with the brand new. That's your choice to make if it's possible, or if you have the appetite and the knowledge to do that. But then I will give you the other case. If you're in the company 20 years after your breakthrough, your introduction, you probably start to get to a point where you're going to have to reinvent not only your engineering team or the product, but every part of the company. And why I'm saying this is I'm fascinated to see Silicon Valley has created so much innovation. So many startups went into the graveyard because they didn't make it.
Yeah.
But that's all we talk about. We're not talking about the company to say, how could it be that 20 years after, I think there's less than 0.1% of the company that make it public or they make it acquired, that are still alive 20 years after. And it's not like they all got consumed into acquisition and so on. They just like didn't prepare their legacy, shifting their thinking, bringing the next generation of leader or grooming them. I mean, I think part of it is because we have such an obsession with the founder syndrome. You know? The genius that come, he or she, and then they create this value. And then what's happened when they leave?
It's their baby.
People knows where the next thing is to go. And it's a tough thing because ultimately you're guilty of running a business which is profitable, predictable, etc. And what I learned from a leadership is this is the danger zone, if you want, because are you measured just to be predictable revenue income, or are you measured for growth? And can you renew yourself to capture that growth? And I think that we need to rethink a little bit, not just leadership, but what's the incentive moving forward past a certain point? Because I've seen executives that are extremely comfortable to take no risk. I know how to run the boat. I know how to get there. I know how to come back. I repeat it over and over, not going to create waves. Go under the radar. Life is good. And I think it's okay to have few folks like that. But if your whole leadership start to think like this, that's where you're going to be really surprised with the disruption that you're in denial and you never see coming. So for me, legacy has to be not just what the company does, but the lasting effect of your leadership on that company. And I've seen people where, look, I'm looking at the people that had the chance to be part of the team with them, and man, they leave and they do great things. And it's so great to say, I know that one. So let's talk, let's catch up. And that's what I hope we can do is the legacy is what the people you bring aboard a concept, but also what they've done after and how they raised the bar on things because they took advantage of things that maybe were not available to you. I'm excited about that, not just the fact that the logo survived 20 years or 30 years.
But I think if I take the idea of disruption and the fact that business model life cycle is now like, what, 12 months, 15 months, as opposed to years, and this perpetual need to reinvent ourselves, both the business, but also the way we lead. What would your recommendation be, Michel, to our listeners for people who are thinking, how can I anticipate what Michel's talking about? How can I anticipate this wave of disruption?
Well, one way, look, I'm not saying that was the only way, but the first thing I learned is talk to your customer.
Sounds so simple.
It sounds simple, but the interesting thing is, I give you an example. For a lot of people in executive sponsorship is about you get an account, you're going to have the ability to learn about them. But if you limit yourself just to think about the product you could sell to them, or prevent a competitor to enter the company, I found out it was fascinating to see a lot of those companies first are bigger than you. They have a global reach and they talk to people. They talk to their customer, to their investor, to their VCs, you name it. They have an M&A. I said, for me, innovation is the ability to correlate multiple sources of information with the desire to say where will be the next growth. And ultimately, that correlation, I didn't have AI and ML at the time to do it. But we had an ability to say if we connect to the industry in multiple ways, we aggregate this knowledge. We also remember who we are. What's our core value and differentiation? It gives you a ways to draw maybe 3 to 4 years ahead of time. And the thing you have to be able is to have a structure that can take risks within the company. And I call it in the book, like placing some bet. It's good to put some new chips somewhere. The question will be, are you going to be able to structure those new investments by taking people that deserve to see their new idea to fruition, or you're just going to rely on another source to do it? And I will say that it's a circle. Everything is a circle of innovation for me. It's take an idea to concept, to validate, to renew, reiterate. So I think for me that the big thing is have a strategic framework. Don't change your strategy every 8 months. This is crazy. You have to land somewhere because if you climb the mountain, it's going to take a while. And pivot if you hit the wall. If something happened that you couldn't control or anticipate, here's the time to say, okay, what do we do now? But I think the people are going to succeed is run your business. It's fair to expand your business through acquisition, to market segment, through this and that. And then look into, if I was to start now, how do I will try to take share from my own company?
Yeah.
And this is
Nice.
amazing when you
Yes.
when you do it, because then you say there will be a team, which mission is to say, how do I tank the boat? And what would they do that we were afraid to do? And a lot of time, I think that what I realize is if I want to take share from a big institution, if you want, I will go into a space where there is a division of labor in such a way that the other side doesn't pay attention to the other. They forget their solution. They're independent unit. You go straight in the middle, and guess what? Nobody's going to stop you. It's amazing in the market. And a lot of time, they won't stop you because the decision that led for them to be involved or not in that market was done 10 years ago. And how many times have you seen company or people will say, why are we not doing this? Well, because that's not the way we do it. And you're like, we said that. Well, that was decision 10 years ago, 15 years ago. And you're like, so we cannot talk about it? No, that's distraction. That's verbatim. I think, ask yourself, how much religion, how many sacred cow can you not entertain in the company? And that's why I like those exercises of what if scenario.
Yeah.
If a big disruption happened, what happened to the company? If a competitor strike right in between, even better, if the competitor acquired your two top competitor.
Yeah.
What's good for you? What's bad? I mean, you can look at all of this. And I think we lack a lot of what if scenario moving in traditional company, because it's much easier to back to the kitchen. Why don't we stick to the same menu? Yeah. It's famous now. Everybody like X, Y, and Z. I don't want to change it. Yeah. Well, eventually there will be a different ways to cook the same thing. So that's my feeling.
Okay. Instead of reverse ideation of how can I make the worst meal possible, or, how can I bankrupt my company? But you're right. How can I take shares from my company is something that steps out of our normal thought processes.
Oh yeah, and look, there's a company that have tried to do it in a way where to say, why don't I do a spin-off? Why don't they go and build a thing where we're afraid to build it because it will have to take share from us? But all of this thing is about, market comes and go. Don't drink your Kool-Aid. Realize that everything age and everything benefits from your neural reinvention and this and that. And I think if the leadership can do this and you can bring people in a workforce that can adapt, you're going to be there for a long time.
Nice. So I'm going to leave our listeners with be ready to reinvent yourself, your business, and your leadership. Okay.
Absolutely.
Michel, thank you so much for coming and sharing your stories, your experience, and the contents of your new book. Where can people find out more about you, what you do in the book?
Yeah, you go on Amazon. Look, I never published anything before. I work with a great firm to help me, and it's published on Amazon. And just do the search Beyond the Code with my name. Okay. Which will be your first test.
Yes. What's the second test if they want to actually speak to you?
And then, look, hopefully you will learn something or will be useful, and send me feedback.
Okay.
It's all good.
Can they get in touch with you via LinkedIn, or do you have a website, or what?
Yeah, I have my website on LinkedIn. If you look at my profile, you will have an easy way to order the book. You have also an easy way if you want to engage in a discussion. Okay. More than happy to do it. All right. I like to help people to succeed. It's fantastic.
Yeah, but back to your legacy. Okay, super. I will put all those links in the show notes. Thank you, Michel. Great conversation.
Thank you, Susie.
Thanks.
All the best.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.